only speaks to people who've broken one of society's ultimate taboos, the illegal practice of sexual contact with animals, a subject some people may find disturbing.
Oh my gosh, fire!
Blow it up, quick. Don't shake it, you'll spew it everywhere. There was never a day in my life when I was growing up and I said, okay, I think I'm going to go have sex with animals today. It started out when I was very small. I just had a deep connection with animals, all the pets that we had growing up and all. I just felt deep feelings for them, and as I grew older and these feelings matured, it eventually moved on to sex. There was no decision made.
I see animals as spiritual beings first, and because I see them as my spiritual equals, I don't have any issue with seeing that they have the same needs that I have, which is to eat, to enjoy their bodies, and to love and to be loved.
I've been with animals, I've been with humans. I love to be with both.
Five years ago, I made a film about people who choose to have sex with animals. After it was shown, a number of zoophiles, as they like to be known, wanted to tell their stories.
Can't go by a group of horses without taking a real close look at them and wondering. Great many thoughts.
Yeah. There's a black one there with a big blaze and a couple white socks that just, she's nice.
Oh, hello.
Hello, bud.
Hello, pretty boy.
Sweetie.
Easy, easy. Cool. Please do come visit.
There's a dog.
Hey, baby. Hello, pretty one.
Hello.
Wow. Now this is a rush. Ah, yes. A piece of ecstasy. This is the most incredible turn-on when I'm approached like this. It is the most incredible turn-on. Ooh. This is a pretty girl here. She's an Arabian.
This is the first time that they've spoken openly about their secret desires.
If they found a field full of horses, it may be a while.
Oh, I know Ken. He scritches the ponies for hours on end.
They wanted to show me a strange and often shocking sexual subculture. I was surprised to find these passions are not limited to lone individuals.
I wish I was as sexy as Amara is sometimes.
They included women, couples, and even animal relationships within families.
That good? You can get it kind of juicy. It'll soak it up if we put it back in the fridge.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the questions are, well, you know, is it the same as with a man? Is it as good as with a man?
No, better.
Well, it depends.
Yeah, it depends on the dog, depends on the man.
You know, a lot of human men just they don't like foreplay. Dogs love foreplay. They love to have a good time. They love to have sex.
I just thought, should I add some mushrooms to the salad too?
Yeah, you could probably
add
do some in the sauce. And
that's what I was going to do.
For most people, the idea of sex with animals is revolting. So I wanted to find out why people become zoophiles, and why this form of sexuality, above all others, remains taboo. I started with the question, what exactly is zoophilia?
Zoophilia is one of the 40-odd paraphilias. And para means beyond the usual, and philia means love. These conditions used to be called the perversions, and on the street they're called kinky sex.
Zoophilia is, according to the dictionary, is really love for animals. but usually people, when they talk about zoophilia, they talk about people who are in love or have an emotional connection with their animals, and they also have sex with their animals.
My first introduction to zoophilia came when I met Mark.
Friends riding with me used to drive them nutty. It's going along, and all of a sudden I'd back off the gas. I might even put on the brakes. Wow, look at her. And they'd snap their heads around. What? Where? Then they realize, oh, damn, it's a horse. Shouldn't say that unless it's some girl in a bikini.
He's had sexual relationships with animals for 40 years.
There's a horse up there on the right.
Can you tell if it's male or female?
A recent illness has left him partially blind. He lives in a trailer home in the backwoods of Missouri. At the time I met Mark, sex with animals was not illegal in this state. And this allowed him to become the first zoophile to go public about his sexual preference. Mark shares his home with horses, dogs, donkeys, and Pixel.
My territory, I get first shot at all the goodies.
Pixel, looky here.
Yeah.
Mark married Pixel in an unofficial ceremony 7 years ago.
I love Pixel. She's gorgeous. My God, that's a beautiful little pony. She's sweet. She's loving. I'm very proud of her, and I like to be able to tell people how wonderful she is.
He was so proud of his relationship with Pixel that he made the extraordinary and potentially dangerous decision to go public about their marriage. He agreed to appear on one of America's most notorious talk shows, Jerry Springer.
See about all the fights. Well, today we have a love story.
A Springer Show exclusive. Mark is what you might call an animal lover.
In his crusade to be accepted, Mark agreed to appear on the Jerry Springer Show.
Meet the man who married his horse.
And you are having intimate relations with a beast. I wouldn't take nay for an answer.
I married a horse.
As soon as the audience saw what was coming up, you know, welcome his wife, and here comes a pony. Well, it was in the fan then. They just went crazy. I loved it. Jerry, well, at one point he says, I think I'm going to vomit. If I'd been faster on my feet, I would have replied, hey, it's your show, go ahead.
This is pretty sick, isn't it? What do you mean? Okay, hey.
America never got to see Mark. The show was pulled, judged too controversial even for Springer. In Mark's hometown, rumors and jokes soon spread.
In West Virginia, this is a true law, I'm not making this up, down south in West Virginia, it's legal to have sex with an animal if it doesn't exceed 40 pounds. You see dogs just going, give me some more. Give me some more! More kill the pigs! I weigh 38 pounds, he's got a heart on! That is disgusting!
Be careful, Sandy. You know, this is Pixel's territory. I've paid a price for this lifestyle. I've had to face up to some friends that just couldn't handle it and say, okay, well, you know, I'd hate to lose you as a friend, but I understand. I'm sure that I would see my children much more often than I do. They claim they're okay with it, and I think they are, but they don't really want to talk about it. Don't like to be reminded of it too much. They understand it's a part of me.
Mark continues to promote a positive image of zoophilia.
red dog's coming up this way.
Oh, yeah?
He spends hours each day on the internet, talking to other zoophiles from around the world.
Is that the truck that stopped here a couple months ago?
Here they can communicate without fear of their identity being given away.
The internet, I think, has been of major importance in the forming of anything that could be described as a zoo community. Before that, contact with other zoos was extremely difficult. Your best friend could be boffing the beef on the side, and you'd never know he was a zoo unless he told you.
I was surprised to find that no one has a clear idea of how many zoophiles there are. The only published data was by sexologist Alfred Kinsey. His survey in the 1950s only looked at bestiality, one-off sexual acts with animals. He reported that perhaps as many as 1 in 3 boys in rural areas had experimented with animals. But his research has since been discredited. To get a more accurate picture, the Institute for the Advanced Study of Human Sexuality in San Francisco conducted a survey of over 100 zoophiles.
The people in my study, some of them, not all of them, but some of them see their relationships with animals as very unique. They really love their animals. Some of them treat the animals as a spouse, as a significant other. When I asked them to list down what is their marital status, I had 2 or 3 people put down that they're married to their animal.
I wondered if there was a common factor that could explain all this. Some psychologists believe that events in early childhood determine our sexual development.
Everybody has a love map, and it's very easy for them to go wrong. What makes one boy or one girl's love map develop so as to end up being zoophilic instead of just ordinary? Nobody knows. However, if I try to reconstruct it in the case of a zoophile, that in early infancy, this person was extremely deprived of tactile stimulation, which babies really need. And I've heard that story particularly from a woman paraphile who was kept locked away a lot of the time in the basement, and she was sexually molested by her uncle. She had been born of incest herself, and that was kept strictly undercover. And the only consolation she had in life was this little dog, and she would put it between her legs. And when she got fully grown, she liked it much better than her husband's form of sex. So you have a poignant story of how somebody could easily be switched along the path of zoophilia. And incidentally, nobody would ever live next door to that lady and guess it. She otherwise passed as a normal mother and housewife.
But not all zoophiles have been abused as children. For Mark, his interest began with simple adolescent curiosity.
The first time I even had an inkling of sexual attraction or the idea of an animal as a sex object, 16 years old, a good friend of mine and I had been riding a little pony cart around near his grandparents' farm. And at the end of the ride, to take proper care of the equipment and the pony, he handed me a brush and a comb and told me to wipe the horse down, comb her, and brush her. And I got around toward the back end of that little pony, and she had her tail up in the air. And something just went ka-ching in my mind. It's girl pussy, pony pussy, pussy. And I looked around real quick and touched it. Well, here I was. I'd been trying to do all the right stuff, ask girls out to the right movies, and of course, well, they were busy. Maybe try to get them to go out and eat a burger and shake or something like that. Well, they're busy, but, you know, ask me again sometime. And sometime never came. So when I actually went out and had intercourse with that pony mare, I didn't feel that I was being weird. I felt that I was being superior. It sounds horrible. It's a personality flaw and so forth, but yeah, I thought I was being superior. Hey, I outsmarted the system. By God, I got even with all the girls. Who needs them? This worked great. Hell, this was so good that sex with a woman would probably kill me.
Isaiah said, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil." And so we are living in a day when people want to call evil good and good evil, when man has turned a deaf ear from hearing what God says in His Word.
Take not thy Holy Spirit.
Oh, Lord Jesus, I pray, God, this morning that you would just create a new heart in us today, Lord.
Mark grew up in the Bible Belt. His father was a preacher, and his upbringing came strictly from the Old Testament.
Father, I thank you for the blood of Jesus today, hallelujah, that cleanses us and that washes us clean and whole so that we might be presentable and ready to appear before the glorious God. Amen.
Leviticus 20:15 and 16. If a man lie with a beast, he shall surely be put to death, and you shall slay the beast. And if a woman approach any beast and lie down thereto, thou shalt kill the woman and the beast.
Bestiality is a sin that goes back way in the Bible. It goes back to the Old Testament passages of Deuteronomy and Leviticus and something like that. And whether that was going on at that time, we're not sure, but at least in the foreknowledge of God and the wisdom of God, knowing what man could do and what he could be capable of, God really condemns bestiality in the Scripture and the Word of God. In fact, the penalty for that was death.
Pre-Christian, pagan cultures were openly fascinated with sexuality in all its forms, and often worshipped the image of animals. They saw less distinction between human and animal. They believed in hybrid creatures, the offspring of interspecies sex, here half man, half goat. All this changed with the arrival of Christianity. The new religion taught that to be human was not to be animal. Man must conquer his base animal instincts to rise closer to his God. Satan was often shown as a beast. At first, offenders were not punished, but during the Middle Ages, bestiality was considered as evil as homosexuality and sex with demons. By the 1500s, the offence so challenged the accepted order of man and animal, both were punished by death. Maybe this explains why we still demand severe penalties, with up to a 2-year prison sentence in the UK. But this does not deter individuals, or even couples with families.
Come on. Come on. Come on.
Michael has brought the family dog to visit Laurie, his wife.
Come here. Hello. There's my baby. Oh.
Laurie and Michael are now separated, but for 25 years they shared their lives with 2 children and various animals.
Say hello.
It's been 3 months since Laurie has seen her lover, baby Golden.
Kisses and hugs. You are such a...
When they broke up, they decided the dog should stay with Michael.
To watch our golden retriever and her interact is just awesome because, I mean, he just adores her and she loves him, and it's really cool. It's just really neat.
Oh, I just love you. I miss my baby. Oh.
Laurie and Michael were both sexually active with animals when they married. With the arrival of children, they agreed to give up their animal passions. But after a few years, Michael found this too difficult.
When you wake up in the middle of the night and your husband's not there, the barn is rather close to the house, you know, for no reason, okay, why is he out there? And a wife usually knows.
I wasn't aware that my wife was aware that I had reestablished my intimate relationship with my mare. It was just, I was trying at that time to be true to myself and the loved ones in my life. And sometimes juggling those things is no small task.
It was a very difficult situation. It's like, fine, you want to be with her, then be with her. So I would get resentful and remove myself out of the, you know, the triangle.
Come on, get out of the stickers. Come on.
Because of the sexual tension and the secrecy, I wanted him to tell me. And so he started to pour all this out of the pain that he had gone through. And, you know, it became very honest. He told me about all the relationships. He really, for the first time, expressed how deeply he felt and how much his love was for horses.
Michael and Laurie agreed to bring back Michael's mares into their relationship.
What was interesting, though, and this is because of how we can be in our relationships, we can be very possessive. And a real loving relationship is not about possessing another living soul. And she says, well, I got to come out and watch. And I went, oh. And I've discovered that in that respect, with the proper people, I'm not ashamed of that also. I was a bit intimidated because knowing how emotional my wife can be about some things, I thought, oh gosh, if she loses it during this can get ugly. But the neat thing was she came out and watched, and it was another opportunity to bring us all closer. And it's kind of interesting. She says, well, can't have any other women. And I'm going, well, I don't have an issue with that, because women can make awesome friends. I enjoy speaking and visiting with women. But overall, you stand a pretty woman and a pretty mare, I'll take the mare.
I shared him with 3 other horses. There were times where I could accept it. There were times when I resented it because I wanted him there for me.
Over here.
Laurie felt their relationship could not continue. She insisted they separate while they work it out.
There may come a time where we could all live together, but, you know, he does miss the inside companionship, having somebody to cook dinner now and then, take a shower with, you know, have a massage. There are certain things that an animal relationship can't provide.
Zoophiles are not alone in their love for animals. Many pet owners have such intense relationships that when their pets die, they grieve as if they've lost a loved one. But the idea of any sexual contact would horrify them. It would be as unnatural as having sex with a child.
Now, we can love children very deeply, and yet that love is not shown in any sexual desire for the children. We all love our own children very much, and there are very, very few humans who cross over the line and attempt to have sex with their children. But it is interesting that the adults who do, who are almost invariably male, always claim that the child initiated the sexuality. I find that very interesting in terms of humans who claim that the animals are initiating the sexuality. I think that's an excuse. I think it's a form of denial. I don't think it's real.
Tell me, Mark, how do we know that you're not forcing sex on your animals and that they're actually giving consent?
Consent is one of the slippery issues among discussions between zoophiles and non-zoophiles. Take Pixel, for example. She's not tied up. She could walk away. She could run away. She could kick the living bejesus out of me. She could bite. Horses are not defenseless. The friends of mine with dogs, well, not dogs. You ever try to do something to a dog really didn't like? At least the dog that has all its teeth?
I think the problem here is that we are talking about domestic species. And the very definition of a domestic species is that they are under our control. So my problem with zoophilia is that it is a one-way street. It is not the animal who is choosing to have a sexual relationship with us. It is we who are imposing a sexual relationship upon the animal.
There is no doubt that they are into the moment, if one understands how horses react. I mean, sex is pretty straightforward, folks. Member A goes into slot B. At that moment of orgasm, for lack of a better word, the two souls actually merge and touch, albeit for a brief instant. And it's humbling. And yet it's so intense, it's rejuvenating. Mares do orgasm. Yes, they do. We call them maregasms. And when a mare orgasms, a lot of times, well, they will, you can feel their muscles tense up and they kind of oomph, for lack of a better word. And yes, they orgasm. There's no doubt.
Nobody asks animals whether they want to work for us, serve as foods for us in a restaurant or at home. Nobody asks the animal anything. People just take animals for granted. But when it comes to having sex with animals, all of a sudden people start feeling very uncomfortable about this and say, this is abuse. But killing animals, that's okay because we eat them.
Hope everybody likes onions.
So, you know, everybody else asks. I haven't heard. What was your first experience?
Well, actually, it was kind of interesting. I was house sitting for somebody, watching their dog and their birds and their fish and stuff. I was maybe 10, 11 years old. I don't quite remember. So I went skinny dipping, and one day I bent over to test the water. You know how you do. Just bend over
yes,
and
it's nice to know how cold it is.
Yes, and, well, their dog kind of snuck up behind me and stuck his nose between my legs. Needless to say, I was a little bit surprised, but I was like, that feels good. But then he decided he wanted a little more, so he jumped on. And at that point, I learned what it was to lose your virginity. It scared me half to death. But then it kind of started feeling good, and I'm like,
Yeah.
But then again, the other scare that I had was, oh my God, I'm going to have puppies.
I think I was like 22 the first time that I had, you know, allowed a dog to have sexual intercourse. So it kind of just grew from there.
Oh, yeah?
But, I mean, I had dog companions in between. I've always loved the feel of fur my whole life. And my dog was always there as a good friend, soaking up tears, whatever I was going through. And I don't know, I guess it was just one night. We were snuggling in bed, and I was petting him, and he just got very curious. And, you know, I mean, there was more of an oral thing. And, I mean, I became kind of curious about him. So, I mean, to begin with, it was more of just curiosity.
So you lost your virginity to a human first?
To a human. I was like, 15 or 16. 15.
I was 21 when I lost my virginity to a human.
It was before I was 16 because, you know, I guess I was more curious sexually and more interested.
My problem was most of my boyfriends weren't interested in it, and I never could figure out why.
Ellie did eventually meet Ken, who shares her sexual preference.
Oh, he grab
grab a couple handfuls of that smaller stuff
Okay.
there, and I'll get some of this. I was technically a virgin until I was 29 years old. I was a zoophile up until then, and I just basically didn't have much interest in other members of my own species as far as a life bond or anything. But when I met Ellie here, we clicked. It was the one person that I felt within a week probably after I met her. We were meant to be together.
There you go. Come sit over here.
Ken and Ellie met through a zoo friend on the internet. After a few weeks, they arranged their first date.
Well, the first night that he came up to visit me, I took him down to the barn to introduce him to some of my horses and some of the other horses that I enjoyed at the barn. And I took him in and introduced him to my miniature stallion. And kind of, I don't know if it was subconscious, I was very nervous and kind of wanted to do the shock factor, as it were. My miniature stallion was dropped and masturbating. When his penis is dropped and he slaps it on his belly, they call that masturbation for stallions. And so one thing led to another and I couldn't resist, so I bent down and started sucking on him. And then he tried climbing on top of me, so the next thing I know, my pants are down and I'm bending over for him and I'm like, excuse me, I can't resist. And I guess part of me said, okay, either he's for real and he won't mind this, or he's not for real and he's going to be totally freaked out by it and run. Obviously he didn't run.
No, actually, I was very tempted at the point to have sloppy seconds. It turned me on. It was so erotic to watch this, and just the whole thing. And it didn't shock me at all. In fact, I was like, this is pretty cool. I think I found somebody here that might be on my plane here, and it went from there. And here we are, married.
Yeah. Well, I have vaginal sex with my miniature stallion. He's not a whole lot larger than most humans. He is a bit bigger, but not uncomfortably so. I like to suck on him orally, and he especially enjoys that.
I have anal sex with the miniature stallion. He penetrates me, and it's pleasurable, but it's not real intense. It's like I said, the pleasure that I get from it is more from knowing how much he enjoys having sex with me. He tends to tell me about it. He talks a lot. He grunts and wickers and blows in my ear, etc. And that is very erotic to me, more so than the physical sex.
When he's courting me, as it were, trying to entice me to bend down or kneel down, he does a lot of, I call it a hubba hubba. He just kind of goes and makes this little hubba hubba noise to me, and then once he's in, I mean, for every stroke that he does, he makes this big grunting noise, and then when he orgasms, he makes an even bigger grunting noise.
And he tends to like to hold on with his teeth, and I actually have some scars on my back from where he's bitten onto me, just hanging on. They do the same thing with mares when they have sex, and only mares have fur to hang on to. He tends to get a big chunk of skin with me, and that can be quite painful, but usually I don't even notice until after the fact because I'm so caught up in the moment. And then I get up to the house and Ellie says, oh, I see you've been down fooling around, you've got a big bite mark on your back again.
JRH NBR, just the right height, no bucket is required. I happen to have a pony mare that is JRH NBR. And that's really nice because you're not trying to do a balancing act standing on something.
It's so funny, the guys start comparing about what they used to stand on.
Or how,
what is more stable.
Or how they disguise it in their car. Or then you go to a strange barn and you start and you catch the guys checking the bottoms of the feed buckets for footprints.
To me, I feel there are a lot more women who are with their dogs that men have no idea.
I'm sure there are probably people who would say, well, boy, you're going to hell because of how you are. But I'll tell you, if there's a hereafter, just let me muck the stalls and care for them. It just feels so good inside.
Ooh, kisses.
I'm not ashamed of who and what I am. There's no shame involved, and it's taken me many years to learn to deal with that.
Zoophiles who have accepted their sexuality and can share it with their partners are the lucky few. For most, discovery leads to disaster. Sarah now lives alone with her dogs.
My husband and I were married for almost 10 years, and we had a pretty happy marriage. We both worked, we owned a home, we had 2 cars, we had 2 dogs. We were a happy couple. I didn't really become aware of zoophilia until much later in my life. When Miles and I moved into my room together, it became a little more intimate. I think the first time that I actually decided to take my clothes off and feel his fur next to my bare skin was pretty surprising. That was one of the first things that I did, was I just stripped and got down and laid down on my bed, and my dog come up, and the 2 of us just laid down and took a nap together. He gave me a lick on my nose, and it was just like a regular relationship. And just feeling the comfort of his warm body next to mine, and it just never felt like anything was wrong with that. It always felt really natural to me.
Sarah was 36 when her husband first began to suspect her relationship with Miles, the family dog. He decided to have Miles castrated.
Well, I would say that the act of castrating Miles was one of the nails in the coffin, but the threat to have him euthanized if he found out I was having anything to do with him that way was absolutely the last nail in the coffin of my marriage.
When family and friends gather around, you'll want to be sure to have everyone's favorite cracker on hand.
Hi. How are you? And that's going to be $5.61 now.
I would have to say, in my life, looking back at all the relationship I've had with humans, that it's been really frustrating, and it's been really hard.
You can't read that woman's mind.
That far away?
And it's not because I lack interpersonal skills, because I don't. I get along quite well in the world with people. But as far as really being able to extract any really great and tremendous personal happiness, it's been lacking. And I've found that when I'm sitting quietly at home and my dog is asleep and I can put my hand on him and the 2 of us sit, that at that moment I know such pure happiness and contentment that can't be equaled and has never been equaled.
A lot of people are going to think that this interest you have in horses is because you've failed with women. They're going to think that it's an emotional cop-out.
Zoophilia, in my case, is an emotional cop-out in a way, in several ways. I have to be honest about it. I'd much rather deal with a horse than deal with complications of a human emotional relationship. Because every time I've gone the human emotional route, it's been a train wreck. The mind games come on, and pretty soon you're not having an emotional relationship anymore. You're having some kind of freaking contest. And I got tired of that. I didn't need that in my life anymore.
Mark did try to suppress his desire for animals. He married and had 2 children. But his attempt to live without horses was to end in tragic failure. Despite having a wife and children, Mark's attraction to horses still haunted him, and eventually his marriage broke up.
She took off, went to another state, got a job in another state, took the kids with her. I sat down with my prescription drugs and some needles and started to slowly kill myself.
Mark rented a motel room. He had decided to kill himself if he could not come to terms with his desires. He wrote about that night in his book, The Horseman.
Either something made me like this, or I'm just a sick pervert. If it's the first, well, maybe I can change, or if I can't change, maybe I can learn to live with it. Live with myself, without so much guilt. If there's no reason, if I'm merely a piece of twisted, subhuman scum, then the world, my parents and my children would be better off without me around them.
After that night, Mark realized that his emotional happiness lay with horses. He went to visit a horse trader.
What do you think I'd give for that little bay horse there? $350. $440. Hard to come by. You can't hardly find a pony. They're all gone.
Yeah.
They're got so high.
Yeah.
He bought his first horse here, a young pony mare.
Cherry. Wild Honey Cherry. She saved my life. That little pony saved my life. I would have been dead in another 2 months.
Mark lived with Cherry for a year and a half.
One night, we'd just finished making love, and I was sitting down on the edge of her feed bunker by her head. She kind of nibbling and nuzzling on me, and I was scratching her. And I looked at her, she looked at me, and all my previous resolve about keeping sex separate, keeping animal sex as just a separate relief, when I realized then I couldn't deny it anymore. I loved her. I was in love with her, and I told her. Tears started trickling down my cheeks, and I reached over and just laid my hand on her nose and said, "Cherry, I love you. I'm in love with you. I love you, Cherry." And I just felt so happy, so extraordinarily happy. So, like I'd cast off chains that I'd worn for years and didn't even know were there. One night we had, I told her I loved her. The next day she got sick. And she died.
Mark is suffering from hepatitis C. He caught the disease from an infected tattoo needle and needs kidney dialysis 3 times a week.
a friend of mine, Barbara, she's quite an artist, and she designed this tattoo for me. The ideal relationship with Pixel. I'd like to be able to communicate in more detail with her. Deep down, way down. I'd love to have children with her. She's... I don't know. I don't know if I'd want a human child out of her, a half-human child, or a regular foal out of her. That's not the issue, and of course it's not going to happen. That's pure blue sky fantasy. But she means that much to me that if I could, I would. Absolutely.
Our reaction to zoophiles is not surprising. For most of us, just the thought of sex with animals is revolting. But while making these films, I found that we appear to fear and loathe zoophiles more than others we define as sexually deviant. Could it be that we feel so strongly, not just because of the sexual element, but because zoophiles cross boundaries, upsetting the nature of our relationship to animals, whether we keep them for pets or meat?
It's not a disease. You're not neurotic. You're not psychotic. It's a different lifestyle. It's a difference. It's not disease. It's just different. It's like being gay
The gay
or
lifestyle.
bisexual. It's different.
We would never expect anybody else or want anybody else to become this. Because if you're not, then it is not your lifestyle.
To ask a zoophile not to feel the way they do about animals is akin to asking a person of a certain ethnic origin or color or gender not to be in who and what they are.
During the time I spent with Mark, I came to realize his relationships with Cherry and Pixel were not just about sex. However strange it may seem to us, for Mark and for the other zoophiles, they were genuine love affairs.
Cherry and I used to walk the street quite a bit. Almost every afternoon we'd walk down, go to the little convenience store and get some Tootsie Rolls or tropical snow. Coming up on my house, white one right up here, with the evergreen by the corner. Back there is where Cherry's buried. If I could push a button and have everything change so I just had a normal life, emotionally, sexually, kept my family more or less together, spend the weekends grilling hamburgers in the backyard and drink a couple beers with my buddies while I watched a football game on Sunday afternoon. In other words, just be Joe Average. Would I do it? Would I choose? Could I? If I could make a choice between being a zoo and being, quote, normal, end quote. God, I don't know. I don't know.
Stay with 4 Live Big Brother is next.